Hello there, and welcome to Restful Realities. Before we begin, I'm curious, where are you watching from tonight? What time is it where you are? Perhaps you're settling in as darkness falls, or maybe the sun has already set hours ago, and you're seeking that final bit of calm before sleep finds you. Wherever you are in the world, whatever hour shows on your clock, you're welcome here. Tonight, we're embarking on a gentle journey through Colombia, a nation where snow-capped mountains touch the clouds, emerald mines glitter beneath ancient stone, and rivers carry the whispers of civilizations that flourished long before history began its written record. As you settle into this quiet hour, let the rhythm of these words carry you softly toward sleep. There's no need to remember everything, no need to hold on tightly to each detail. Simply let the images wash over you like warm waves on a distant shore. Colombia finds itself at a crossroads in early 2026, navigating complex diplomatic waters that ripple across the entire South American continent. The nation's current president, Gustavo Petro, became the country's first leftist leader when he took office in 2022, marking a significant shift in Colombian politics after decades of center-right governance. His administration represents a departure from previous governments, with supporters viewing it as long overdue representation for marginalized communities, while critics have raised concerns about various policy decisions. Petro's vice president, Francia Marquez, made history as Colombia's first Afro-Colombian vice president. In a country where nearly 1/4 of the population identifies as Afro-Colombian, and where indigenous communities have sought greater voice in national discourse for generations, this representation carries symbolic weight across different segments of society. The political landscape has grown increasingly complex as Colombia approaches its 2026 elections, scheduled for March and May, with over 107 candidates initially declaring their intentions to run for president. The electoral field reflects both the vibrancy of Colombian democracy and the deep divisions that characterize its political culture. President Petro maintains an approval rating hovering around 37%, a figure that political analysts attribute less to specific policy achievements and more to what he represents. A break from traditional power structures that had governed Colombia for generations. The upcoming elections carry particular weight because they will determine not only the nation's domestic direction, but also its position within the broader geopolitical shifts occurring across Latin America. Recent diplomatic tensions with the United States have cast a long shadow over Colombia's immediate future. The relationship between Washington and Bogotá, which has endured for more than 2 centuries and weathered countless storms, entered one of its most strained periods in early January 2026, following military actions in neighboring Venezuela. When United States forces conducted operations resulting in the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, Colombia's government condemned what it characterized as a violation of Latin American sovereignty. President Petro drew historical parallels in his criticism of the military intervention, comparisons that reflected broader questions about sovereignty and international intervention that resonate differently across various segments of the region. The United States government has defended its actions on different grounds, creating a situation where the two nations hold sharply divergent perspectives on the events. The security situation within Colombia's borders remains fragile, with violence affecting communities across multiple regions. In 2024, the country recorded a homicide rate of approximately 25.4 per 100,000 people, a figure that places Colombia among the nations with the highest violence rates in Latin America, though notably lower than the peak rates experienced during the 1990s, when the country was torn apart by drug wars and insurgent conflicts. Kidnappings and extortions have increased in recent years, sources of both revenue and territorial control for illegally armed groups that continue to operate in areas where state presence remains weak or contested. The National Liberation Army, known as the ELN, represents the largest remaining rebel force in Colombia, controlling significant portions of the border region with Venezuela and maintaining involvement in cocaine trafficking operations that span both sides of the international boundary. Colombia's 2,219-kilometer border with Venezuela has become a focal point of security concerns, particularly as regional instability threatens to spill across the frontier. This vast borderland, characterized by dense jungle, remote mountains, and river systems that pay little attention to lines drawn on maps, has historically served as a refuge for armed groups, drug traffickers, and others seeking to evade government authority. The area's remoteness makes it nearly impossible to monitor effectively, and local communities often find themselves caught between competing forces, each claiming legitimacy and demanding loyalty. Following the Venezuelan military intervention, Colombian defense forces activated enhanced security measures to protect the population and prevent potential retaliatory actions by groups that might view the current instability as an opportunity to expand their influence or settle old scores. The peace process that began with the 2016 agreement between the Colombian government and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, known as FARC, continues to face significant challenges nearly a decade after its signing. November 24, 2025, marked the 9th anniversary of this historic accord, a milestone that arrived amid complex circumstances that test the agreement's durability and the nation's commitment to building what the accord calls a stable and lasting peace. The agreement envisioned comprehensive reforms, touching everything from rural development and political participation to drug policy and transitional justice. But implementation has proceeded unevenly, with some aspects advancing while others have stalled or regressed entirely. The Special Jurisdiction for Peace, Colombia's transitional justice system established under the peace agreement, has worked to investigate and prosecute those responsible for serious crimes committed during more than 5 decades of armed conflict. This innovative judicial mechanism operates on principles of restorative rather than purely punitive justice, offering reduced sentences to those who confess their crimes fully, contribute to truth-telling, and provide reparations to victims. The system has faced criticism from multiple directions, with some arguing it is too lenient on perpetrators of atrocious crimes, while others contend that it fails to address the structural inequalities that fueled the conflict in the first place. Former President Alvaro Uribe, once a key United States ally in the region, faces charges of bribery and fraud related to alleged witness tampering, accusations connected to his purported ties to paramilitary groups responsible for serious human rights violations, charges he continues to deny. As international funding for peace implementation has declined, particularly following the end of substantial support from the United States Agency for International Development, questions arise about Colombia's capacity to fulfill the ambitious promises made in the 2016 agreement. In September 2025, Colombia's Constitutional Court issued a ruling determining that the Peace Implementation Unit lacks the independence, resources, and political influence necessary to fulfill its mandate, particularly in guaranteeing the security of those who signed the peace accord. Signatories to the agreement have long advocated for the establishment of a presidential advisory office with greater authority and resources. And in November 2025, the Petro administration announced it would elevate the Peace Implementation Unit to precisely such a status, responding to both the court's ruling and long-standing demands from those most invested in seeing the peace process succeed. Now let us turn from politics and security to the physical landscape that shapes Colombia's character, beginning with the mountains that dominate the nation's geography and imagination. The Andes Mountains enter Colombian territory from the south, rising dramatically from the departments of Narico and Putumayo near the borders with Ecuador and Peru. Unlike the single continuous range that characterizes the Andes in many South American nations, The Colombian Andes split into three distinct cordilleras: the western, central, and eastern ranges that run roughly parallel through the heart of the country like the fingers of a massive geological hand. Reaching northward toward the Caribbean Sea, the Cordillera Occidental, or Western Range, extends along Colombia's Pacific coast, creating a dramatic barrier between the ocean and the interior valleys. This range, though lower in elevation than its sister cordilleras to the east, captures moisture-laden winds blowing inland from the Pacific, resulting in some of the highest rainfall levels anywhere on Earth. The slopes facing the ocean receive such prodigious amounts of rain that they support rainforests of extraordinary density and diversity, ecosystems that remain among the most pristine and least explored in all of South America. The western slopes transition into the Chaco biogeographic region, a zone of such remarkable biodiversity that Conservation International designated it as one of the world's critical biodiversity hotspots, home to species found nowhere else on the planet. The Cordillera Central, the middle range, rises higher than its western counterpart, reaching elevations that support permanent snow and ice despite Colombia's tropical latitude. This range contains some of Colombia's most dramatic peaks, including several active volcanoes that occasionally remind inhabitants of the dynamic geological forces still shaping this landscape. The Nevado del Ruiz, a snow-covered volcano in this central range, erupted catastrophically in 1985, generating mud flows that buried the town of Armero and claimed more than 23,000 lives, a tragedy that remains seared in Colombian collective memory. The Central Range also hosts the coffee-growing regions that have become synonymous with Colombian identity. Slopes between 1,200 and 1,800 meters in elevation, where temperature, rainfall, and soil conditions combine to produce some of the world's most prized Arabica coffee beans. The Cordillera Oriental, the Eastern Range, stretches the farthest north and encompasses the greatest land area of the three Cordilleras. This range contains the high plateau where Bogotá, Colombia's capital city, sits at an elevation of 2,640 meters, making it one of the highest capital cities in the world. The Eastern Cordillera hosts numerous paramo ecosystems, high-altitude wetlands that exist only in the northern Andes and serve as crucial water sources for millions of Colombians living in the cities and towns downstream. The range continues northward, eventually dividing into two branches, one extending toward Venezuela, while the other curves westward to form the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, an isolated massif that rises directly from the Caribbean coast to snow-covered peaks just 42 kilometers from the ocean. The Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta deserves special attention as the world's highest coastal mountain range, a compact pyramid of stone and ice that contains every climate zone from tropical beaches to Arctic conditions, within a horizontal distance that can be walked in a single day. Its two highest peaks, Pico Cristobal Colon at approximately 5,776 meters and Pico Simon Bolivar at 5,775 meters, stand just 42 kilometers from the Korean coast, creating a vertical journey of more than 5,700 meters in elevation. This mountain massif, separate from the main Andes chain, functions as an ecological island where species have evolved in isolation, producing a concentration of endemic plants and animals found nowhere else on Earth. The Sierra Nevada holds profound spiritual significance for the indigenous peoples who have inhabited these mountains for millennia, communities that continue to practice traditional ways of life and maintain sacred sites throughout the range. Between these mountain ranges lie valleys that have served as population centers and agricultural heartlands throughout Colombian history. The Cauca Valley, running between the western and central Cordilleras, supports sugarcane plantations, cattle ranching, and the city of Cali, Colombia's third largest urban center. The Magdalena Valley, separating the central and eastern Cordilleras, cradles Colombia's most important river, which flows northward through the country's heartland before emptying into the Caribbean Sea. These interandean valleys, with their moderate climates and fertile soils, attracted Spanish colonizers and continue to host the majority of Colombia's population. Though the concentration of people in relatively small areas has created pressures on land, use, and resources that contribute to ongoing social tensions. Beyond the Andes to the east stretches a vast expanse of lowland territory that comprises more than half of Colombia's total area, yet contains only a fraction of its population. These eastern plains, known as the Llanos, extend to the Venezuelan border and the Orinoco River basin, a seemingly endless grassland dotted with gallery forests, along watercourses and punctuated by isolated rock formations that rise like islands from the savanna. During the wet season, much of the Llanos floods, creating temporary wetlands that attract waterfowl in spectacular concentrations. During the dry season, the same lands bake under the tropical sun, with grasses turning golden and wildlife concentrating around permanent water sources. The Llanos have developed their own distinctive culture, with Llanero cowboys whose traditions of horsemanship, music, and poetry differ markedly from the cultures of the Andean highlands or Caribbean coast. South of the Llanos, the landscape transforms into tropical rainforest as one enters Colombian Amazonia, the northern portion of the vast Amazon basin that dominates South America's interior. Colombian Amazonia covers approximately 483,000 square kilometers, representing 35% of the nation's total territory and containing a portion of the planet's largest and most biodiverse rainforest. The Amazon region in Colombia encompasses the departments of Amazonas, Caqueta, Guayana, Guaviare, Putumayo, and Vapes, areas characterized by dense vegetation, powerful rivers, and human populations so sparse that vast territories remain essentially wilderness. The Amazon River itself only briefly touches Colombian territory in the extreme south, but numerous major tributaries flow through Colombian lands, including the Caqueta, Putumayo, and Vapes rivers, waterways that serve as highways through forests where roads do not exist. These rivers carry enormous volumes of water, draining rainfall from territories that receive between 2,000 and 4,000 millimeters of precipitation annually, rain that falls with such regularity that the forest ecosystem depends utterly upon this. Moisture, a dependence that makes these regions particularly vulnerable to climate change and alterations in rainfall patterns. The flooded forests, known as varzias, undergo dramatic seasonal transformations as water levels rise and fall by 10 meters or more, creating aquatic habitats that support fish species found nowhere else, while also providing nutrients that sustain forest productivity during the dry season. The biodiversity contained within Colombian Amazonia represents one of the planet's great treasures, though one that remains imperfectly understood despite centuries of scientific exploration. The region harbors pink river dolphins that navigate the coffee-colored waters of major rivers, hunting fish by echolocation in conditions where vision provides little advantage. Giant river otters, among the Amazon's apex predators, hunt in family groups, their sleek forms gliding through waters where caimans and anacondas also lurk. The forest canopy, often 40 meters above the ground, supports communities of primates, sloths and birds that rarely if ever descend to the forest floor, while jaguars patrol territories measured in square kilometers, their spotted coats providing camouflage in the dappled light beneath the trees. Colombia's position as the world's second most biodiverse country reflects not just the absolute number of species present, but also the extraordinary variety of ecosystems compressed within its borders. From Caribbean coral reefs to Pacific mangrove forests, from Andean paramos to Amazon lowlands, Colombia contains an estimated 314 distinct ecosystem types, more than almost any other nation on Earth. This diversity arises from Colombia's unique geography, situated where South America narrows to meet Central America, where three Andean mountain ranges create isolated valleys and slopes with varying conditions, where both Pacific and Atlantic oceans contribute their influences, and where latitudes span from nearly the equator to well into the northern tropics. As of 2021, scientists had registered between 63,000 and 71,000 species in Colombia, with approximately 8,803 endemic species, organisms that exist nowhere else on the planet. These numbers represent only what has been documented, and experts believe thousands of additional species await discovery, particularly in remote areas that have only recently become accessible to researchers. As Colombia's security situation has improved, the country holds the global record for bird diversity, with more than 1,920 species recorded, a total that exceeds the bird diversity of entire continents and reflects the variety of habitats available, from seabirds along 3,300 kilometers of coastline to high-altitude specialists in paramo ecosystems, from rainforest canopy dwellers to grassland species in the eastern plains. Colombia ranks first globally in orchid diversity, with more than 4,000 species identified, representing approximately 15% of all orchid species worldwide. These ethereal flowers occupy virtually every habitat in the country, from sea level to mountain peaks, from dry forests to cloud forests, perpetually wrapped in mist. The national flower, the Cattleya trianae orchid, exemplifies the beauty and diversity of Colombia's flora, though it represents merely one among thousands of orchid species that have evolved extraordinary adaptations to attract specific pollinators, from bees to moths to hummingbirds. Many Colombian orchids remain vulnerable to habitat loss and illegal collection, with some species known only from single localities, where their continued existence depends on conservation efforts that remain underfunded and understaffed. The country holds the second position globally for plant diversity, with more than 51,000 species recorded, and for amphibian diversity, with over 800 species of frogs, toads, and salamanders documented. Colombian amphibians include poison dart frogs whose brilliant colors advertise their toxicity to potential predators, glass frogs whose translucent skin allows observers to see internal organs, and giant harlequin toads that inhabit fast-flowing mountain streams, where they cling to wet rocks with specialized toe pads. The nation ranks second for freshwater fish diversity, with more than 1,500 species inhabiting rivers, lakes, and streams, though scientists believe hundreds of additional species remain undiscovered in remote waterways that have never been systematically surveyed. Colombia's paramo ecosystems deserve special recognition as one of the planet's most unique and threatened habitats. Paramos exist only in the northern Andes, occurring at elevations between 3,000 and 5,000 meters, where temperatures drop below freezing at night, but warm to 20 degrees Celsius during the day, where high solar radiation during the daytime alternates with heat loss at night, and where moisture often arrives as fog rather than rain. Colombia contains more than 60% of the world's paramo ecosystems, with the remainder found primarily in Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, and Costa Rica, making Colombia's conservation of these habitats critical to the survival of species found nowhere else on Earth. The paramo's most characteristic plants are the frailjones, strange rosette-forming plants belonging to the genus Espalicia that can grow to several meters in height over decades or even centuries. These plants, which look like something from a Dr. Seuss illustration, have evolved remarkable adaptations to the harsh paramo environment, including thick, fuzzy leaves that insulate them against cold temperatures and help them capture moisture from fog, and the ability to grow very slowly, adding just a few centimeters per year. An adaptation that also makes them extremely vulnerable to disturbance, since damaged plants may require decades or centuries to recover. The paramos function as water factories, capturing moisture from fog and rain, storing it in soils and vegetation, and releasing it slowly through springs that feed rivers supplying water to millions of Colombians living in the cities below. Coffee arrived in Colombia during the late 1700s, brought by Jesuit priests who recognized the potential of the country's mountainous terrain and moderate climate for cultivating this valuable crop. The oldest written testimony of coffee's presence in Colombia appears in a book from 1730 by Jesuit priest José Gumila, who documented his journey along the Orinoco River and described the plants, animals, and indigenous cultures he encountered. From these humble beginnings, coffee would transform Colombian society, economy, and identity in ways that no one in those early days could have imagined. The first commercial coffee exports from Colombia occurred in 1835, when approximately 2,500 bags, each containing about 60 kilograms of green coffee beans, were shipped from the eastern port of Cúcuta near the present-day Venezuelan border to markets in the United States. As the international commodity market exploded during the mid-1800s, coffee production spread from the eastern regions to the central and western departments, including Cundinamarca and Antioquia, where wealthy landowners recognized opportunities to profit from growing global demand. The world economy was entering its biggest boom yet between 1850 and 1857, and Colombia's most prosperous landowners knew they had to capitalize on the insatiable appetite for coffee developing in the United States, Germany, and France. The late 1800s and early 1900s brought crisis to Colombia's large coffee estates, as international prices plummeted and the Thousand Days' War devastated the countryside between 1899 and 1902. This conflict, which historical records indicate claimed more than 100,000 lives and left much of the country in ruins, forced many plantation owners who had incurred heavy foreign debts to subdivide their lands among workers, inadvertently creating the system of small family farms that would come to characterize Colombian coffee production. According to popular legend, a priest named Francisco Romero played an influential role in spreading coffee cultivation by assigning the planting of coffee trees as penance to his parishioners. Though historians note that Romero was also a politician and entrepreneur who recognized the economic potential of coffee cultivation, whether through religious mandate or economic foresight, the result was the same. Coffee estates of Santander and North Santander entered into crisis, and the estates of Cundinamarca and Antioquia stalled. But from this collapse emerged a new model based on small-scale farmers, who could make permanent and intensive use of land that under traditional slash-and-burn agriculture would have remained unproductive for long periods. In 1927, small coffee producers united to form the National Federation of Coffee Growers of Colombia, recognized at the time as the largest non-governmental organization in the world and created specifically to protect the interests of coffee farmers who lacked the political and economic power of large landowners. This federation would transform Colombian coffee from a regional agricultural product into a global brand synonymous with quality. In 1938, the federation founded SINICAF, a research center dedicated to improving growing processes, developing disease-resistant varieties, and helping farmers adapt to changing conditions, from market fluctuations to climate change. If you're finding this journey through Colombia's landscape soothing, consider subscribing to Restful Realities and leaving a like on this video. Your support helps us continue creating these peaceful explorations of our world's hidden corners and forgotten stories. But there's no pressure, no urgency. Simply rest and let these words continue to wash over you. The 1950s brought one of the most successful marketing campaigns in agricultural history when the Federation created Juan Valdez, a fictional character portrayed as a traditional Colombian coffee farmer wearing a poncho and wide-brimmed sombrero, always accompanied by his loyal donkey Conchita. This character became the face of Colombian coffee worldwide, appearing in advertisements that communicated not just the quality of the product, but also the care and tradition behind its production. Juan Valdez transformed Colombian coffee from an anonymous ingredient in blended products into a premium, single-origin product that consumers actively sought out. And many have called this character the Uncle Sam of Colombia, though that comparison perhaps undersells the affection and pride Colombians themselves feel toward this symbol of their agricultural heritage. In 2007, the European Union granted Colombian coffee protected designation of origin status, recognizing it as a unique product inextricably linked to its geographic region. Then, in 2011, UNESCO declared the coffee cultural landscape of Colombia a World Heritage Site, acknowledging not just the economic importance of coffee, but also the cultural traditions, architectural styles, and ways of life that have developed around coffee cultivation over generations. This UNESCO designation encompasses 6 farming landscapes, including 18 urban centers on the foothills of the western and central Andean ranges, areas characterized by the architecture of Antiochian colonization with Spanish influences, where building materials traditionally included cob and pleated cane for walls, with clay tiles for roofs. Today, Colombia produces approximately 11.5 million bags of coffee annually, making it the world's 3rd largest producer, overall after Brazil and Vietnam. Though it ranks first for Arabica beans specifically, the species prized for its complex flavors and lower bitterness compared to Robusta coffee. The Coffee Triangle, comprising the departments of Caldas, Quindio, and Risaralda in the central Andes, produces the majority of Colombian coffee, though other regions like Huila, Cauca, Narico, and Santander have developed reputations for distinctive beans with unique flavor profiles, reflecting their specific microclimates and soil types. Colombian coffee accounts for roughly 12% of the world's coffee supply, and the industry provides livelihoods for more than 600,000 farming families, making coffee not just an export commodity, but a cornerstone of rural economies and communities throughout the coffee-growing regions. Beneath the mountains of Boyacá and Cundinamarca, in the eastern portion of the Andes, lie treasures that have captivated humanity for millennia. Emeralds of such exceptional quality and color that they have become synonymous with Colombian identity and wealth. Colombia produces approximately 55% of the world's emeralds, according to recent industry estimates, dominating global production to a degree matched by few countries in any mineral commodity. While commercial-grade emeralds are relatively plentiful in Colombian mines, fine and extra-fine quality stones remain extremely rare, commanding prices that can exceed those of diamonds of comparable size. The history of emerald mining in Colombia extends back at least 1,500 years, with historians estimating that indigenous Muzo people developed the expertise to extract these green gems from the mountains around 500 CE, though the precise dates remain subject to scholarly debate. The Muisca and other pre-Columbian civilizations used emeralds in religious ceremonies, and based on archaeological evidence and early colonial accounts, researchers believe these cultures considered them tears of the gods that had fallen from the sky and become embedded in the earth. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the mid-1500s, they spent 5 decades subduing the Muzo people before gaining control of the mining areas, then forced the indigenous population to work the very mines their ancestors had operated for centuries. Spanish monarchs and gem-loving royalty in India, Turkey, and Persia eventually sought these new world treasures, and emeralds from what is now Colombia appeared in crown jewels and religious artifacts across the Old World. Early colonial chroniclers documented the indigenous reverence for these stones, recording beliefs and practices that have since become intertwined with the emerald's mystique. The three major mining areas in Colombia are Muzo, Cosquez, and Chiver, names that have become synonymous with different quality and color characteristics of emeralds. Muzo, located approximately 100 kilometers north of Bogota, remains the most important emerald mine in the world, producing stones with a warm, grassy green color, often with hints of yellow. Chiver, situated about 75 kilometers northeast of the capital, yields emeralds with a deeper green color, sometimes with bluish tones. Cosquez, very close to Muzo geographically, produces stones noted for their brightness, sometimes called green fire, often with more yellowish coloration. The terms Muzo and Chiver do not always refer to the specific mines, but rather describe emerald quality and color derived from the local, indigenous languages. Famous Colombian emeralds include the Patricia Emerald, a 630-carat D-hexagonal crystal discovered in 1920 and now housed in the American Museum of Natural History in New York. The Crown of the Andes with its 453 emeralds, totaling 1,521 carats, including the 45-carat Atahualpa Emerald, named after the last Inca emperor, and the Gachala Emerald, an 858-carat crystal found in 1967. More recently, the Fira Emerald, discovered in Muzo in 1999 and weighing 2.2 kilograms or 11,000 carats, became the second largest emerald in the world, while the Tena Emerald, also found in Muzo in 1999, weighing 400 grams or 2,000 carats, is considered the most valuable emerald in the world based on its combination of size, color, and clarity. The emerald industry has historically been plagued by violence and illegal activity, with the Green Wars of the late 1980s claiming approximately 3,500 lives as rival factions fought for control of mining areas. The business was controlled by family clans that formed private armies and had ties to cocaine traffickers who used the emerald trade to launder money, creating a situation where the law of the jungle prevailed and government presence remained minimal or ineffective. The period was so dangerous that longtime miners from Muzo remember it as a time when people would kill whoever they wanted without fear of consequences. Security has improved dramatically in recent years as the Colombian government succeeded in bringing more order to the mining regions. Though illegal mining remains widespread, with estimates suggesting only about 10% of Colombia's emeralds are sold through legal channels. The Colombian coastline stretches for approximately 3,300 kilometers, divided between the Caribbean Sea to the north and the Pacific Ocean to the west, providing the country with maritime access to both major oceans and creating coastal ecosystems of remarkable diversity. The Caribbean coast, extending roughly 1,800 kilometers from the Gulf of Urabá in the west to the Guajira Peninsula in the east, encompasses everything from pristine coral reefs and mangrove forests to tourist beach destinations and major port cities. The Pacific coast, measuring approximately 1,500 kilometers in length, remains far less developed than its Caribbean counterpart, characterized by dense rainforest that extends almost to the water's edge, extraordinarily high rainfall, and human populations concentrated in a few urban centers, while vast stretches of coastline remain relatively wild. The Caribbean coastal region extends from the foothills of the western and central Cordilleras to the beaches and islands of the Korean Sea, a mostly flat region crossed by numerous rivers that drain the northern Andes and create extensive wetlands near their mouths. This region includes the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, the aforementioned isolated mountain massif that rises directly from tropical beaches to permanent snow and ice, creating a unique situation where visitors can swim in warm Caribbean waters while gazing at snow-covered peaks. The Caribbean coast also encompasses the Guajira Peninsula, the northernmost point of South America, where arid desert conditions prevail and indigenous Wayuu communities maintain traditional pastoral lifestyles based on goat herding. Major Caribbean port cities include Cartagena, a colonial city whose remarkably preserved historic center, surrounded by massive stone fortifications built during the Spanish colonial period, attracts visitors from around the world and earned UNESCO World Heritage designation. Barranquilla, situated near the mouth of the Magdalena River, serves as Colombia's principal Caribbean port and hosts one of South America's largest carnivals, a vibrant celebration second only to Rio de Janeiro's famous festival. Santa Marta, founded in 1525, holds the distinction of being Colombia's oldest surviving city and serves as a gateway to both the Caribbean beaches and the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta Mountains. The Pacific coast presents a dramatically different character from the Caribbean, with rainfall levels among the highest on Earth, creating conditions where rainforest thrives all the way to the ocean's edge. The Chaco biogeographic region, extending from northwestern Ecuador through western Colombia into eastern Panama, receives between 7,000 and 13,000 millimeters of rainfall annually in some areas, making it one of the wettest places on the planet. This extraordinary precipitation supports rainforests of incredible density and diversity, with tree species existing nowhere else and animal communities that include endemic birds, amphibians, and mammals found only in this narrow strip of land between the Andes and the Pacific. The Pacific coast's human population concentrates primarily in a few urban centers, particularly the port city of Buenaventura, Colombia's largest Pacific port and a critical gateway for international trade. Between these settlements, the coastline remains sparsely inhabited, with Afro-Colombian communities in small villages accessible primarily by boat, maintaining traditional fishing practices and ways of life with limited connection to the national economy and infrastructure. The Pacific coast's mangrove forests provide critical nursery habitat for fish and shellfish species, while also protecting coastal areas from erosion and storm surge. Though these forests face threats from development, pollution, and climate change-induced sea level rise, Colombia's indigenous peoples represent the living continuation of cultures that inhabited these lands for thousands of years before European contact. Communities that maintain distinct languages, spiritual practices, and relationships with the natural world despite centuries of colonization, marginalization, and pressure to assimilate into mainstream Colombian society. Approximately 87 distinct indigenous groups survive in Colombia today, speaking 65 different languages belonging to 13 linguistic families, a linguistic diversity that reflects the deep time depth of human occupation and the geographic barriers that allowed isolated populations to develop unique cultural and linguistic identities. The indigenous population of Colombia, estimated at around 1.9 million people, or approximately 4.3% of the total national population, concentrates in certain regions while remaining almost entirely absent from others. The Amazon region hosts numerous indigenous groups living in varying degrees of contact with Colombian society, from communities that have chosen to remain isolated in remote forest areas to groups that have engaged more extensively with the outside world while working to maintain their cultural identity. The Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta harbors the Cogui, Waiwa, Arhuaco, and Cancuamo peoples, communities that view their mountain home as the heart of the world and see themselves as the elder brothers responsible for maintaining cosmic balance through spiritual practices and protection of sacred sites. The Wayuu people, Colombia's largest indigenous group with a population exceeding 270,000, inhabit the arid Guajira Peninsula, where they have adapted to harsh desert conditions through pastoralism based primarily on goats and sheep. Wayuu society maintains matrilineal clan structures where inheritance and identity pass through the mother's line, and women play crucial roles in community leadership and decision-making. The Wayuu are renowned for their weaving traditions, creating intricately patterned bags called mochilas that have become recognizable, symbols of indigenous artistry, not just in Colombia, but internationally. The 1991 Colombian Constitution recognized indigenous peoples' rights to self-governance in their territories, creating resguardos, collectively owned indigenous territories where communities exercise autonomy according to their own customs and traditions while maintaining a relationship with the Colombian state. These resguardos cover approximately 34 million hectares, roughly 30% of Colombia's total land area, though the vast majority of this territory lies in sparsely populated lowland regions of the Amazon and Orinoco basins. Indigenous communities and resguardos manage natural resources, administer justice according to traditional law, and maintain their own educational systems teaching in indigenous languages, though these rights exist more completely on paper than in practice. With indigenous territories facing constant pressures from illegal armed groups, drug traffickers, illegal miners, and economic interests seeking to exploit natural resources, Colombia's urban population concentrates heavily in a few major cities, with Bogotá, Medellín, Cali, and Barranquilla containing the majority of the country's roughly 51 million inhabitants. Bogotá, the capital and largest city, sprawls across a high Andean plateau at an elevation that leaves visitors from lower altitudes feeling breathless as they adapt to the thinner air at 2,640 meters above sea level. The city's metropolitan area exceeds 8 million people, making it one of South America's largest urban agglomerations and creating challenges of traffic congestion, air pollution, and infrastructure provision that have prompted innovative responses, including the Transmilenio bus rapid transit system and an extensive network of bicycle paths called ciclovias. Medellín, Colombia's second largest city, with a metropolitan population approaching 4 million, sits in a narrow valley at a lower elevation than Bogotá, resulting in a year-round spring-like climate that has earned it the nickname City of Eternal Spring. Once notorious as the home of drug lord Pablo Escobar and the site of some of Colombia's worst violence during the 1980s and 1990s, Medellín has undergone a remarkable transformation in recent decades, implementing innovative urban planning initiatives, including cable car systems that connect poor hillside neighborhoods to the metro network and library parks in marginalized areas that provide community spaces and access to education and technology. Cali, Colombia's third largest city, with a population exceeding 2.2 million in its metropolitan area, lies in the fertile Cauca Valley in the southwestern part of the country. Known as the salsa capital of the world, Cali pulses with a vibrant musical culture rooted in the African heritage of much of its population, descendants of people enslaved and brought to Colombia during the colonial period to work in gold mines and sugarcane plantations. The city celebrates this heritage through music, dance, and festivals while also grappling with inequality, violence, and the legacies of discrimination that continue to affect Afro-Colombian communities. Urbanization has accelerated rapidly in Colombia since the mid-20th century, driven by multiple factors, including rural to urban migration, seeking economic opportunities, and fleeing violence in the countryside. Colombia's armed conflict, which has spanned more than 6 decades, has forcibly displaced millions of people, making the country home to one of the world's largest populations of internally displaced persons. These displaced individuals and families have often ended up in informal settlements on the margins of major cities, areas that lack basic services like potable water, sewerage, and electricity, and where residents face discrimination and difficulty accessing employment, education, and healthcare. The national symbols of Colombia, speak to the country's natural wealth and cultural identity. The national bird, the Andean condor, soars on thermal updrafts in mountain regions. A massive raptor with a wingspan exceeding 3 meters at once ranged throughout the Andes but now faces threats from habitat loss and persecution. The national flower, the Cattleya trianae orchid, displays the colors of the Colombian flag in its blooms, yellow, blue, and red petals celebrating both botanical diversity and national pride. The national tree, the wax palm, or Ceroxylon quindiuense, can reach heights of 60 meters or more, making it the world's tallest palm species. A giant that grows in cloud forests and has become emblematic of the Coffee Triangle region. Colombia's flag, adopted in its current form in 1861, consists of horizontal stripes of yellow, blue, and red, with the yellow stripe occupying the top half of the flag, while blue and red divide the bottom half equally. The colors carry symbolic meaning, with yellow representing the gold and natural wealth of Colombian lands, blue symbolizing the seas that border the country on 2 sides, and red honoring the blood shed by those who fought for independence from Spanish colonial rule. The national anthem, O Gloria Inmarcesible, or O Unfading Glory, was officially adopted in 1920, setting to music a poem written by Rafael Nanez, and celebrates Colombia's struggle for independence and the beauty of the nation's landscapes. Modern Colombia stands at a crossroads between its troubled past and an uncertain future. A country blessed with extraordinary natural wealth and cultural diversity, while facing persistent challenges including inequality, violence, and issues that decades of various policy approaches have struggled to resolve fully. The economy shows mixed indicators, with some macroeconomic measures appearing relatively stable, while concerns persist regarding rising public debt, the suspension of fiscal discipline rules, and informal employment affecting nearly 58% of the workforce, leaving millions of Colombians without access to the protections and benefits that formal employment provides. Infrastructure deficits remain a persistent obstacle to economic development in many regions, with vast areas of the country experiencing limited connection to markets and services. The coca cultivation that provides raw material for cocaine production continues as a complex issue in Colombia, despite significant resources devoted to eradication efforts and alternative development programs over several decades. In 2023, coca cultivation and potential cocaine production reached record levels, before apparently stabilizing in 2024, though the area under cultivation remains substantially higher than it was a decade ago. The United States government assesses that approximately 97% of cocaine in the United States originates in Colombia, making counter-narcotics cooperation a cornerstone of bilateral relations. Different administrations in both countries have pursued varying approaches to this challenge, from aerial eradication and manual removal to crop substitution programs and rural development initiatives, with ongoing debates about the effectiveness of each strategy. Climate change poses existential threats to many of Colombia's most valuable ecosystems and economic activities. Rising temperatures threaten coffee cultivation, as the narrow temperature ranges required for optimal Arabica production shift to higher elevations, leaving farmers in lower areas unable to grow the crop that has sustained their families for generations. Glacier retreat in the high Andes has accelerated dramatically, with scientists predicting that Colombia's snow-covered peaks may lose all permanent ice within decades, eliminating not just iconic landscapes, but also important water sources. Changes in rainfall patterns threaten both agriculture and the paramo, ecosystems that serve as water towers for millions of Colombians. And yet Colombia continues forward, its people displaying resilience in facing challenges that span generations. The country that gave the world Gabriel Garcia Marquez and his magical realism continues producing artists, musicians, and writers who captivate global audiences. Colombian scientists conduct research on biodiversity conservation that contributes to global knowledge. Social movements across the political spectrum advocate for their visions of the country's future. The country remains a place where new species await discovery in unexplored forests, where coffee farmers tend their crops with knowledge passed through generations, where emeralds still emerge from ancient stone, each fact a thread in the larger fabric of this complex nation. As you drift toward sleep, let these images settle gently into your consciousness. Mountains touching clouds, rivers carrying forest secrets, orchids blooming in mist, coffee cherries ripening in highland sun, emeralds glittering in darkness, waves lapping on Caribbean beaches, Paramo frail Jones standing sentinel over water, condors riding thermal currents, indigenous communities maintaining traditions across generations. Colombia, a land of contrasts and contradictions, of beauty and struggle, of hope and heartbreak, a nation still writing its story, still becoming what it will be. May your dreams be gentle, your rest be deep, and may you wake refreshed, carrying perhaps a small piece of wonder from this journey through Colombia's landscapes and realities. Thank you for joining us on Restful Realities. If you enjoyed this journey, please consider subscribing to our channel and liking this video. Your support helps us continue bringing you peaceful, informative content to ease you into restful sleep. Until next time, sleep well.